it's such a huge honor to be here with all of you at Kyoorius. Such incredible design minds here, some of the most amazing design minds in India and in the world, as I've been told. So it is a huge honor to be here. So as you heard, I'm Carrie Hammer, and I am a social entrepreneur, a fashion designer, and a creative consultant to some of the biggest brands in the world to help them redesign, redefine, and change the global definition of beauty. Ooh, can you still hear me? Yeah, okay, great. And so as you as designers all know, you have a very important job in this room, because good design changes minds, but great design changes consciousness. And I want you to really think about that. What you do every single day changes how the world perceives everything around it. So you have a bigger job than you might have even ever thought. I have a lot of common with you guys. After I graduated school at UCLA, I went straight into advertising. And when I was in advertising, all the brands kept on asking me, you know what? We have a great concept. It's genius, actually. We want to go viral. I was like, okay. All the cool brands are going viral. How do we create one of those viral videos? I hear some laughter. It sounds like you've been in some of those meetings. So after so many of those types of meetings, I decided it was time to go and pursue my true passion, which had always been my passion, which is fashion. You know, in 4th grade, I asked for a sewing machine for Christmas. I was doing needlepoint. When I was a child, my mom didn't realize she was raising a little grandmother. And so I went back to fashion school. I went to Parsons in Paris. And when I arrived back from fashion school, I decided it was time to start my own namesake brand, Carrie Hammer, out of my own personal frustration with the lack of powerful, feminine, and fashion-forward pieces for professional women. And I think some of you ladies know what I'm talking about. So after starting my brand, I created 3 global viral fashion shows that garnered over 1 billion media impressions with no PR agency. So you may be asking yourself, well, how did you do it? What's the secret? I'll let you in on it. To go viral, you have to have a virus. You have to be a carrier cell for something bigger, for something positive. You have to stand for something greater. So while my carrier cell, my fashion brand and my fashion shows, my virus was empowering women through positivity and kindness and changing the global definition of beauty. Let me start from the beginning. So I was asked to show at New York Fashion Week back in 2014, and I was going through the checklist with my stylist, you know, DJ, lighting, venue, and we got down to models. And she said, Carrie, what are we doing for models? Are we holding a model casting? And I was like, ugh, Angie, nothing sounds worse than holding a model casting. So to kind of back it up, how I met my stylist was we were backstage at another fashion show, and guess how young the youngest model was there? Younger? 12. She was 12 years old. She came in with her algebra homework. And her show dad was running around taking photos, really creepy. And after they did her hair and her makeup, and she was dressed, and she had gone to some modeling school because she had a little pose. And after all that, after she had been created, she looked like she was literally 30 years old. And it was a real moment for me in my life, really realizing it and seeing it firsthand, that creation. So Angie and I were creating my first show, and we were kind of recounting that story. And I said, you know what, Angie, I don't feel comfortable sending traditional models down the runway when all of my clients are such role models. I was like, oh, I had this lightning bolt moment, and the sky kind of opened up. I was like, oh, we're going to do role models, not runway models. So that's what I did. I called up all my clients, they're kind of amazing women, said, hey, do you want to walk in a fashion show during New York Fashion Week? And let me tell you how that conversation goes. I couldn't. Okay, I will. I will. I'll do it. So that first show was incredible. We had the founder of The Daily Show, the head of the global Google Fiber project, the head of new products at ABC World News, some amazing, amazing women. You can see them here. And you can see it. These women exude passion and confidence. They don't have to fake it. They're the real deal. And these are the women young women should look up to and admire and aspire to be, because these are the women who run the world. I agree. Yeah. I agree. So in that first show, one of the models we originally cast is super sexy, a leggy blonde, a doctor, a sex therapist at that. She just happens to be in a wheelchair. Dr. Danielle Shapuk is an amazing client and friend of mine, and she has a fantastic private practice. She just happens to have a disability. She has had her whole life. And it wasn't even a consideration when we were casting her in the show. I decided to call up all my incredible clients, and Danielle was one of them. So the show went off without a hitch. It was electric, it was inspiring. The role models loved participating. Everyone who was in the audience said it was one of the most amazing shows they had ever been to. And then we got no press, like not a single article. And I was devastated. This is my first show. I'm like a new designer at Fashion Week. I was so upset. And so my friend invited me to a show at London Fashion Week. I was like, oh, I'm going to forget this and kind of enjoy London Fashion Week. But then another friend of mine calls me and she goes, oh my God, rush to your Facebook immediately. Like, okay, what's happening? You know, who got engaged? The ex-boyfriend? But there was an article about the show that had been liked 10,000 times, shared 3,000 times in 21 minutes about our show. Which is the very definition of viral. It turns out one of the reporters who had come to the show had done her homework, which I guess took her a little while, and found out that Danielle was the first ever model on the runway during New York Fashion Week who happened to be in a wheelchair. And, thank you. And we didn't even know. We had never intended to make that kind of statement. But it ended up being incredible, because Danielle and I got 300 emails from girls and mothers with girls with disabilities saying, thank you. I have never seen myself reflected through the lens of beauty. I have never seen myself reflected in fashion, or definitely not at Fashion Week. And that really struck a nerve with me. I never thought about that. You know, we see something like 5,000 images a day, probably more now. And I never thought what it would be like if I never saw myself in one of them. And that really, really, really touched me. But there was one email that particularly touched me and changed my life forever. It was from a beautiful woman named Karen Crespo. She saw an article about us on the cover of Yahoo, and I'll let you see what she wrote me for yourself.
I wish I was an amputee. I wish it didn't, define me, but I can't help but feel that way.
How would you like them to define you?
I guess in a perfect world, I would love to be defined as just me. I was in a coma for 15 days, and for 5 months, I was in the ICU. New Year's Day is when they amputated all 4 of my limbs.
Hi, Carrie. I hope this reaches you. We have never met, but I just had to write you. My name is Karen, and I am 30 years old, living in Los Angeles. I was so thrilled and moved that a designer welcomed someone with a disability on the runway. Beauty comes in all shapes and sizes, and there's absolutely no right or wrong. I still have a hard time dealing with my appearance. I used to have so much self-confidence, but lately I've been afraid to accept myself. I have a passion for fashion, so I hope one day I'll get to show the world why can't people with disabilities, people like me, be beautiful and model. Maybe one day, if I ever get to New York, I'll be able to come meet you. Take care and God bless. Best wishes, Karen Creswell. Still makes me teary seeing Karen. So Karen and I had a conversation, and she told me that after seeing Danielle on that runway, after losing all of her limbs to bacterial meningitis, that she realized for the first time since that happening, her life's mission was to show other people that no matter what, they could be beautiful, and that she felt beautiful for the first time ever since that tragedy. And that really rocked my world, that something seemingly so simple or seemingly so insignificant at the time could really change an entire person's life. And yeah, it really shook me to the core. It still does, obviously. So, of course, we had to invite Karen to walk our next runway. And here she is, and she was amazing. She was super sassy. She did kind of like a little wink at the end of the runway. And it was really, really special to have her there. And she joined 27 other extraordinary women. And she joined the architect who built the Barclay Center, the #1 transgender activist in America, the head of philanthropy at Barclays Capital. And it was that show, and standing backstage and watching all those women at that show, and especially watching Karen, it's where I realized that this wasn't just a clothing line anymore. And this wasn't just about fashion shows or fashion week anymore. We had created a movement, and I call it the Runway Revolution. And after the show, the message spread even further. I think people agreed with the revolution, because then it was ABC World News, Good Morning America, Yahoo, Upworthy, BuzzFeed, and this time even globally, it was Le Monde, Daily Mail, and people were sending me news clips and links in languages I didn't even recognize. I was like, what are these letters? This is interesting. And we got hundreds of thousands of emails and comments and likes, and I realized the Runway Revolution is about a movement that lets women know they don't have to be one size, one shape, one color, one ability, which for so long, fashion and beauty has led us to believe. And I think that is so important, and that has really contributed to my life's work. And then I got another message, this time from an amazing mother who is from Chicago, and she wrote to my personal Facebook, which means I need to tighten my security settings. And she said, Carrie, I saw your runway show. It's amazing. I have this beautiful daughter, Grace, and she was born with 1 extra chromosome, which means that she's an amazing, beautiful girl who happens to have Down syndrome. And I'm really afraid she's gonna grow up and have no role models, or that people are gonna treat her differently because she looks differently from them and they don't see other people like her. Would you consider putting a role model for Grace on your runway? I said, oh my God. And she sent me a picture of Grace, who's gorgeous and adorable. And I said, of course, would you recommend anyone? She said, yes. There's an amazing actress called Jamie Brewer who's on the show called American Horror Story. Does anyone know American Horror Story here in India? Yeah, it's a good show, right? Do you know Jamie? You know Jamie Brewer? She plays Addie. Yeah, she's great. It's too scary for me. I don't watch the show. But Jamie Brewer in the United States is so famous, I had to go through her agent, her manager, and her publicist to get to her. And they're like, she'll think about it. She'll think about walking in the show. But anyway, we convinced her. And here's a little bit about Jamie's participation in the show.
New York Fashion Week is underway here in New York. The annual event is known for its cutting-edge styles and headline-grabbing events.
And this year, all eyes are on one extraordinary model who is turning heads and lifting hearts. ABC's Lana Zach has the story.
Amid pumping beats and flashing lights, history is being made with these first confident steps. Jamie Brewer is the very first model with Down syndrome to ever take on the catwalk at a New York Fashion Week show.
It changes. It changes yourself, and it also changes the world.
So, Jamie is so cool. We were backstage, and she was the last one to go out. She's pretty short, and she like kind of tugged on like my dress. I was like, "Yeah, Jamie, what's up?" Like she had a secret to tell me. She's like, "Carrie," I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'm gonna end this thing with a bang." I was like, I have no idea what that means, but I like it. And she totally did. She like did this like pirouette twirl situation, and there was like some billionaires on that runway who were like, "Okay." And she was like, whoosh, twirl, point. And Katie Driscoll and her daughter Grace were sitting front row to see the whole thing, which was cherry on top of the sundae. And that fashion show was really the shot heard around the world, and it was trending #1 on Facebook for 12 hours. It was trending for 3 days totally, and that was something I could have never, ever imagined. The way I found out, my cousin tweeted me. She's like, someone I went to third grade with just like posted about your fashion show. Like, whoa, that's weird. Yeah, so those are all great stories, and it's amazing that, you know, press picked it up and all that stuff. But what is even more exciting is the fallout from it all. So Models Not Runway Models has since been credited with kickstarting the body positive movement, which is so exciting to see all the things that started happening as a result. So afterwards, we started seeing things like the first ever Sports Illustrated issue with a plus-size model on the cover, or Target, Unilever, and Gap, who had never advertised anyone with a disability in any of their campaigns, had started including disabilities in their advertisements. And if I don't know what the statistics look like here in India, but in America, 20% of America has disability, and the market size of the disability market globally is $8 trillion, the size of China. So if you don't have teams that are focusing on that, pay attention. And even luxury brands and holding companies like LVMH were starting to use the lexicon body positive. And only 1 year after our show, our first show, this happened. Here are 2 shows, one in New York and one in Tokyo, with models that just happened to be in wheelchairs. And it was leading by positive example that started to create this shift in an industry that made me realize how important design was in helping to create a shift. And I really hope this serves as a tipping point and not a trend, because globally, only 4% of women self-identify as beautiful, which means 96% of women don't identify as beautiful. And 8 out of 10 women won't raise their hands in a meeting because they don't want to draw attention to the way they look. And 80% of 10-year-old girls in America have been or are on diets. And that's 4th grade. So it's a real epidemic. So the way we see women is the way we treat women. And overwhelmingly, we see women in ways like this. So it's time we flip the script, and there's a lot of people in this room that have power to do that. So I'm really excited to be here. It's never, ever been easier to shift the paradigm. Turns out doing this is all it took for the fashion industry to sit up and try to follow suit. So people ask me all the time, if you're trying to change the global definition of beauty, what is beautiful? If it's not what we've traditionally seen, what is beautiful? And I say it's been hiding in front of us the whole time. Be beautiful. Be you. It's so simple, right? It's finding the truest, most authentic, most you version of yourself and totally rocking it. If that's like red on red pantsuit, like go, you know? Just being you. So sex no longer sells. Authenticity sells. I love what Chuck was saying this morning. It's feelings sell, emotions sell, authenticity sells. No longer forcing things on clients or on people who are buying your products. It's about helping them find out who they are, helping them find their voice. That is the future. So I encourage you all to explore what that means for your clients, for yourselves. And as a room full of designers and influential advertisers, you have the power in this room to make true change. You have absolutely more power than you might have ever even imagined you did. Because fashion and beauty is a $1.3 trillion industry combined that has traditionally set unrealistic standards of beauty and then profited off of insecurities they helped create. This is no longer an exciting way of marketing or doing business. I think there's a much better way. I love the theme of this conference, Mind the Gap. I interpret this as suspending your belief in what's been done and thinking what's possible. And I hope you, as the brightest minds in India, mind the gap, suspend your belief. Rajesh and I were talking about it, and if you need a good tagline, go to Rajesh. Oh my gosh. We were talking about what best practices mean. And he said, best practices are best forgotten. That's a tweetable. And every time you tweet something, they plant a tree, so you should tweet that. So I think what minding the gap is standing in that space where anything is possible and finding what you truly believe in. What I call it is my true north, finding out what my virtues, my values are, what I really believe in, and making sure that I don't let magnetic north pull me away from that. And what is magnetic north? I think magnetic north is money, status, maybe what your parents want you to do, what society tells you to do, and every time you get pulled farther and farther away from true north, it's even more important to look to it, to know what your values are and stand in it, even when it might be easier to go towards magnetic north. And as long as you're looking to your true north, you can always do work you're proud of. And not just for one campaign or not just for one time in your life, but for a whole lifetime. So I really implore for you this weekend to think about what your true north is, what your virtues, your values are in your life and your work. And I'd love for you to grab me during this weekend and tell me about your true north and how you're going to think about applying that to your work. And also, I'd love to hear about how you're changing the global definition of beauty in your work, and however I can help you in that, I would love to do that. So thank you so much.